Hi, it's Lynne Golodner, and welcome to the Make Meaning podcast. I'm a writer and entrepreneur, and through decades of writing articles for magazines and newspapers and authoring books, I've learned that we succeed through inspiration from storytelling and deep and mutually beneficial relationships. This show began in 2018 after my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and I wanted a way to capture his stories and record his insights. It's grown since then to share stories of how people around the world make meaning from very ordinary pursuits. Now I focus on sharing the stories of writers, authors, and those in the world of publishing to learn how and why we create stories that help us make meaning from the mundane. I'm a former journalist and marketing entrepreneur, and I've been teaching writing for more than 2 decades. As a writing coach, I help authors build their brands and share their words. If you'd like to write with me, check out my offerings at lynnegolodner.com. And you'll find more episodes of this podcast at makemeaning.org, as well as on every podcast platform you can think of. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts. Thank you for tuning in to the Make Meaning podcast. Now, on to the show. Ami Irmen learned to love stories at the feet of her grandfather, her papa, someone who can make the most mundane stories spring to life. She still considers him her favorite storyteller and credits him with setting her down the path to educator and writer. Ami's first novel, All Falling Things, is forthcoming from Scarsdale Publishing, and her second, Wherever Would I Be, taught her all about the world of self-publishing. Previous short stories and poems have found homes at journals such as Sinister Wisdom, the Copperfield Review, and Glass, a journal of poetry. Ami currently teaches writing at Kishwaukee College and resides in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I'm thrilled to welcome her today to the Make Meaning podcast. Hi, Ami. Welcome to the Make Meaning podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to meet you. I know we are part of Peaker Writers together, and I will put that in the show notes so people can find my Peak Challenge and learn all about our cool little community that we're part of. It's great to finally see you and meet you, and I'm thrilled to talk about your writing journey. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So you've said that you can't remember a time when you didn't write, which I love, and I can totally relate to that. So just tell me a little bit about your early memories of writing.
So I grew up in a family of storytellers, so I've always been surrounded by story. So when I say writing, I don't necessarily mean writing it down, but just the creation of stories. So even as a child, just consuming stories. My maternal grandfather is still to this day, he's passed, but has been my favorite storyteller. He could make the most mundane things spring to life. I do credit him for my love of stories, but my dad is also a storyteller, not that he would ever call himself that. So stories were always important. I loved to read. Reading was escape for me. It was a journey in finding new places. And so when I did get to the point of, being able to write, I did start writing stories. I've recently read some of those from my childhood and really bad poetry from high school. And it's quite cringeworthy, but we all have to start somewhere.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. So now you write character-driven narratives. Where do you find your idea?
Oh, goodness. My first book is kind of a joint effort between my love of Alice in Wonderland. All of the characters have a connection to characters in the original story.
So cool.
But also just life. That story sort of evolved from after a particularly difficult period in my life, the realization of how without that difficult period, I wouldn't have some of my most favorite people in my life. They were a result of meeting them during that time or because of that time.
Yeah.
So that idea of not everything is meant to be permanent, not everyone is meant to remain in your life, but if you remove that because it's a heartache or you regret, then what else might you be removing? So there's usually, when it comes to stories, there's usually a piece of life, something that inspired from life, but also just journeys. My second book has a tie to Scotland.
Love it.
I've loved Scotland since college. I took a Scottish literature class with my favorite professor, and I just fell in love with the country. And my best friend and I did a road trip. We did 1,200 miles driving around the wrong side of the road.
Oh my God.
Scotland. And it exceeded our expectations, but she has ancestral heritage there. So she can track her heritage back to Clan MacLeod and specifically the castle in Dunvegan. So we were there, we visited, and that sort of became the catalyst catalyst for part of this story because I wanted something magical involved, and I knew there was going to be a tie. And I knew at some point I would be writing something that took place in Scotland. It's just not. And so those pieces all just kind of came together. So there's inspiration all around, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And it's funny because my next novel that I'm in the middle of writing right now, the first draft of it, partially takes place in Scotland and partially in Michigan where I live. So yeah, it's just this interesting, like I feel this pull and I have no ancestry whatsoever, but it's pretty cool. So yeah, that's awesome. And which university, which professor? We like to shout out to great teachers.
So I did my undergrad at the University of Wisconsin in Green Bay, and it was Dr. Stephen Hall.
Awesome.
I don't believe he's still there. I think he's living in Madison now, but he was such a great teacher, and it didn't matter what he was teaching. He just was so excited about it that it was hard to not be excited. In fact, I took history of the English language with him. And it was the first time in university history that the class had a waiting list because people enjoyed being in his presence so much. Because he just gets so excited. And he was Scottish by heritage. He's actually named in the book.
Oh, I love
one of
that.
the character's favorite professors. I am a teacher as well. So I try to model a lot of that with my own students because I teach freshman level composition as one of the courses I teach. And nobody is taking that because they want to, because they have to. So if I can let my geeky excitement fly, hopefully that can encourage them to find some joy in it too.
Totally agree. And I teach on and off as adjunct faculty at University of Detroit Mercy. Same thing. Like I love my students, but they don't really want to be in that class. They just have to be. And I was going to be teaching the part 2 of it, which is more argumentative writing a couple winters ago when it was still COVID. And it was like, is the class going to fill? Like, and it actually didn't. But I had decided I was going to use the first Outlander novel as the text. And then I was going to have them write argumentative papers about different pieces of history and of the storyline. And I was so excited to do this. I developed like such a cool course for it. And then it didn't go. And I'm like, oh, but I got to reread it, just and look at it more closely. So that was kind of fun. So yeah.
Hopefully you'll get to use that again sometime.
Exactly. Well, awesome. So then once you get your ideas, what is your process of building them out into book length works? Like how do you go about it?
So it's a process that I've developed and revised as I've been writing. But with my first book, I kind of figured it out where it's really helpful for me to know my characters really well before I start actually writing. So the first thing I'll do is K.M. Wayland has a really great character questionnaire that I use. She's got it for free online if you Google her. And I will fill that out for each of the main characters.
Nice.
And I like how specific you have to get with some of the details, such as their appearance and things like that. But also that some of the questions will open up little bits and pieces of these people that I don't know if I would have stumbled upon otherwise. And those sometimes make their way into the story.
Yeah.
It's like I tell my students, you should know your character so well that you know their toothpaste brand. It'll never show up in the story. But you should know what kind of toothpaste they would buy.
I love that. That's like, I never thought of that. I'm totally going to borrow it. That is super cool.
Well, and then the other thing I do is I cast them. I'm a very visual person. So I will find actors or other people and cast them in the roles of these characters so that I have a static picture that I can reference. So if I'm describing a character, I can pull that up and I can see them. And also when they're in my head, I've got a more specific idea. But the goal of all of that is that hopefully it'll break down some of the writer's block that might come up, because if you know your characters well enough going in, no matter what springs up as you're writing, you should be able to sort of organically know what they would do in those situations.
Yeah.
I do write down an outline. I don't always stick to it. If the story goes somewhere or the characters decide they want to go somewhere else, I'm okay with exploring that. Oh, and then I'll sit down and I'll draft.
How long does it take you usually to do a draft?
My first book took 2 years. That is just life and figuring things out. I mean, there would be months where I didn't have time to write. And then I also have a very long commute. So when COVID happened, I wasn't driving as much. And suddenly I had another 7 hours in my week to fill.
Wow.
And less money on gas so I could buy more books, which was also great. So the second book took me, I think, 3 months to draft, but it was short. So there was revision. That was just the first draft. And the third one was 2 or 3 months as well.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So you also write shorter pieces. So tell me a little bit about your writing time. Like, are you mostly now working on books, or do you like take breaks between books to write some shorter pieces? How does that go?
More recently, it's been the books. It's been a little bit since I've done a short story, but with my life and my schedule, sometimes it's just easier to fit in a short story or a poem.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's still drafts involved with that, but it's a little more manageable. And also now that I've been at my college for 14 years now. So there's some things where I can find a little more balance, where maybe I don't need to take as much overload to pay the bills and things like that. So, and I'm more comfortable setting up boundaries. Friday is my writing day. I'm not someone that can do the 15 minutes every day. It takes me 15 minutes just to get into the mindset to write.
Yeah.
So Friday is my day, and I'm very protective of that. But that's not something that I've had for very long.
Yeah. Well, it always evolves and flows based on what your life is dictating. And, I like to say that I have, 3 to 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday to write, but do I do that 5 days a week? Usually not. I mean, I had to take my car to service today. Yesterday, I had an early lunch and whatever, so like you grab the writing time when you can, right?
Yeah. And I'm such a planner. So like I have everything planned out for the whole semester when I have to grade and things like that. So I could hopefully protect my Fridays. But then to get back to I realized I didn't actually answer your question. I've been noticing more and more that the ideas that I've had don't fit into short stories. So I don't know if there's just something in me or in my life that's changed, that I'm just more interested in the longer length. But I do have my master's thesis was a collection of short stories, and it's been on a dusty shelf for over a decade, and I should probably do something with them. But yeah, I'm just the ideas that have been coming to me and that I'm excited about just seem like they won't quite fit in a short story.
Yeah. When you write shorter pieces, do you send them out to like literary journals or magazines, or like what do you do with them?
I've had a couple that have been published under a pen name, but it's been so long. But yeah, back then I did. And same with poetry. I was sending stuff out more than I have recently. I just seem to have shifted my focus somewhere along the lines that it's books that I'm more excited about.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about editing voices of jams. I know this is something that's taken you around the world. And so can you tell our listeners what it is and how you came to it and that whole thing?
Sure. I'm a lifelong learner. I love being a student, and I teach at a community college that's about 6 miles from a university, and I just missed being a student. So I decided to do a couple of graduate certificates just for fun. And one of the classes was a feminist theory class. And I'm a very concrete person. It was the first theory class I've ever really taken, and it was a lot. But the professor had brought in a bunch of different people to talk about projects that they'd been working on that were feminist in nature. And one day she brought in Teresa Wasanga and Andrew Oceano, who are originally from Kenya, but they teach at the university, which is Northern Illinois University. I don't think I said that. They had this dream of opening a school for girls in their home country of Kenya. And when they came in and they talked about it, there was just something about them. They are just very sweet, giving people. And there was something about the school and these girls that they were talking about. I just couldn't get it out of my head.
Okay.
So I had been talking with a friend of mine about this idea that sprung up. Maybe I could go and teach them memoir, and then we could put that into a collection and they could use that to raise money for the scholarship fund. And I had no intention of ever telling the professor. And I was sitting in class, and a friend of mine in class told me about her idea. So I shared mine, and then she raises her hand and calls the professor over. And the next thing I know, I'm in her office and we're talking about an internship to create this project. And she calls up Teresa. She tells Teresa they love it. So I was very excited. I had never been out of the country before. This was my first time. And we went in 2014, and I spent 3 weeks at the school and was just absolutely blown away by these young women. So in Kenya, school is very different in regards to, we have essentially free public school through high school. That is not the case there. You pay fees for most of the schools. So, and it's not compulsory through high school. So you may have students that don't go because they can't afford the fees. And especially if you have multiple children in the family and you can only afford to send a couple, the boys get priority. Even if they do make it to school, then there's also issues of, when they're menstruating, if they don't have access to clean water at the school, then they can't go to school. If something happens at home and they need someone to take care of the family, it's the daughters that stay home.
Oh.
And even there was a primary school down the hill from where we were that the teachers would send the girls to the river to get water for the teachers to drink.
Wow.
So they pay the fees and they finally get to class and they're still not being educated.
Yeah.
So their dream was to build a school. It is a boarding school, so it's harder to take the girls out. And also that they would have half of them at least would be on scholarship.
Okay.
So we went. They are extremely hardworking students. They have a required bedtime, lights out, because otherwise they would study all night. And then they'd be up at 4:30 in the morning in the classrooms teaching each other.
Wow.
Because they understand what an education can really mean for them and for their family and for their community.
Yeah.
And they were really excited about the project. There was only one girl who asked not to be included. Obviously, we got their permission before we used their stories. But they were just so excited about this idea of their stories, their voices could help to educate other young women. And it was incredible.
Awesome. That is so great. Is the school still in operation?
Yep.
Yeah.
When I was there, it was and they built slowly. They did it really smartly. So when they started with one grade, and then the next year they added the freshman class and so on and so forth. So when I was there, it was their 4th year and we got to witness their first graduation.
Oh, I just got chills. That's so nice. Oh my God.
It was so lovely. But also they do things differently. Government schools still allow corporal punishment. It's a very the call and response, question and answer.
Yeah.
It's here the students are allowed to question things and they're allowed to explore the things that they want to explore. There's no corporal punishment at all at this school. That was rule number 1. And so at the end of their high school, they have a high stakes exam that will dictate whether or not they can go on to university or to college.
Okay.
And 100% of the girls are testing into, which is unheard of. I mean, nationally, I think the average is 43%. I probably should have looked that up, but it's pretty low.
Okay.
For folks to get into college and university. And these young women, I mean, between 95 and 100% of them every year are testing into. So the school is still there. It's doing an amazing job. The ripple effects are already being seen because now that first class, one of the girls actually went to school to be a teacher and has come back to teach at the school.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
It's so great. I love it. Yeah.
That's awesome. We'll put in the show notes details about the school and the project so people can support it if they want. So that's really, really cool. Well, I want to pivot a little because I want to hear about your publishing experience. So I know that you've been traditionally published and also self-published. So I'd love to hear about those experiences. And now that you've had both, which path you'd like going forward and why?
So my first book is with the publisher. It's not out quite yet. I know I went in knowing that publishing was a slow process. I don't think I realized just how slow it was.
Yeah. Yep.
There's been some struggles. I've learned it's very important to have an editor who is really a good champion for your book and what the difference that can make for the whole process.
Yeah.
There's so much that you can't control with traditional publishing, which I knew going in, and I'm an introvert. So I wanted the traditional publishing because the idea of having to market myself is terrifying.
Yeah.
But it's been overall, it's a good experience. It's just, I want to hold it. I want to hold it in my hand. It's, it took 2 years to write and then all the time to revise. It's been about 2.5 years since I first signed.
Okay. Did you find an agent that found you the publisher or did you go directly to a small press?
So I participated in the Diverse Voices Pitch Fest on Twitter.
Okay.
And
cool.
that's how I found the publisher, or the publisher found me and had asked for the query package and I sent it and then asked for the full and then made the offer.
Great.
So
congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was one of those moments where, I mean, I can't tell you how many writing conferences I've been to and the panels you go to about how to get published. And everyone's like, it was the right place, right time. It's like, I can't follow that. That's not a path that I can replicate. And then this happened and I was like, well, that's not something I can tell someone how to do. Like you can participate in it, but it's not a guarantee that they're going to like the pitch. I mean, it's 280 characters to get their attention.
Crazy.
That whole experience is actually why I decided to self-publish the second book, in addition to my writing bestie, my best friend, Jack Lelko, has a book out that he self-published. Mm-hmm. And watching him go through that process, the joy that he got, it was just really inspiring to see. And so it sort of gave me the courage to do it, because I'm like, not the sense of like, well, if he can do it, I can do it, but like, he did it, he can help me through it.
Yeah.
Because it is such a learning curve.
Yeah.
So much about this process. Because again, there are so many paths to get there, even through self-publishing. Mm-hmm. And it can be overwhelming. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, that, are out there looking to make money off of you in not so great ways. And so to try and find the right people to get involved with and to figure out that process can be scary. But it was really wonderful because I did get to have control. I don't really have a lot to say over the cover, even potentially the title. Getting to do that with this book was really lovely, because the finished product that I'm holding, I can be like, this is all me. This is exactly how I wanted it to be.
Awesome. Yeah. So do you think that's what you'll do going forward? You'll put out your own books after this?
I think I might do both. I think it'll depend on the book. I have another YA book that's a fantasy that I might do that with, but then I'm also working on a murder mystery, and I feel like that might be a little bit easier to query.
Yeah.
Which is inspired by my love of detective procedurals. So where the inspiration came from, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
But I would see doing both again, probably.
Okay, so now tell me about the books, the titles, when they're coming out, et cetera, et cetera.
So the first one, if it gets to keep its title, will be All Falling Things, which I've looked on, Amazon and everywhere to make sure that no other book had that title. So that is likely to keep it. Yeah. I'm not sure yet when that will be out. We are on our final round of edits, but we don't have a launch date as of yet.
Okay.
The second book is called...
Wait. First book, genre, little synopsis.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All Falling Things is women's fiction. It is a dual narrator, and it's a story of two people who are basically trying to find their path in life.
Okay.
They've both sort of been going through the motions. He's from New York. She's from California. Okay. And they both end up in Chicago and happen to meet. Okay. And it's going back to before. This is the book that has the connections to Alice in Wonderland. So her name is Alice. She is, in the Wonderland of Chicago. And he's the White Rabbit character. And so each of the characters, like she meets a woman there who becomes her good friend, who is the Cheshire Cat and likes to ask these really philosophical sorts of questions and things like that. But again, it's this notion of finding their path, but also realizing not everything is supposed to be permanent. And that just because something ends or doesn't work out doesn't mean that it wasn't worth it or that you didn't gain something from it.
Okay, cool.
So they both sort of help each other find their paths.
It's so clever. I love it. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. Did I get all the ones that all the points?
I think you did. Yeah. So book 2, what's that?
So book 2 is Wherever Would I Be?
Okay.
And it's the story of a 17-year-old girl named Lucy. Also takes place in Chicago. I'm originally from a suburb of there. For some reason, that's where a lot of my stories are happening. But she is adopted at the age of 1. She has no memory of her birth family. And at this point, so she's 17, and at this point, she has 4 adopted siblings as well.
Okay.
And her parents created this sort of family because the father, Luca, had a rough childhood, but bounced around in foster family and things like that, and then finally landed in a home where this older woman took an interest in him, adopted him, gave him a chance to be a kid. So that's sort of his philosophy. He wanted to pay that forward. He wanted to find children who needed love and support and just a chance to be a kid. So all of these characters, these children, have stories that aren't necessarily the best lived experiences as children, but they get a chance to be a child in this home.
Okay.
Lucy, in comparison to her siblings, is the only one who doesn't know her history because she was so young. She wasn't abused. She wasn't neglected like her siblings were. So she kind of walks this balance of, do I want to know? Do I not want to know?
Yeah.
But also, how do I ask mom and dad about my birth family without them feeling like they weren't enough? So she struggles with that. So cut to, she's on a trip to New York to see her brother in for work, and she stumbles upon a see-through man, which she doesn't know at the time, but it's an imprint of an ancestor. And so this sets her on the path because she's able to figure out his name and then the date based on a letter that he's writing. She can't interact with him. He can't hear her. She's just watching a scene play out. But it sends her on the path of discovering what happened to her family And also, of course, having to, in a way, come out to everyone. So to her brother and to her best friend and to her parents, that she can see these people.
Wow.
And she ends up connecting some information and finding out that she does have a living relative that's living in Scotland. So that's the connection to Scotland.
Okay.
Her and her best friend and her older brother all go so that she can learn about her history. She does go, I've borrowed my best friend's ancestry of her Dunvegan Castle and things like that as a way to honor, her. And then she figures out who she is and the fact that she's always been who she is, and learning about these other people, this other family that loved her first, doesn't change anything, right? There is nothing she could do to put herself on a different path. This just was her path.
Nice. So is that like YA fantasy, or what genre would you say for that?
So it is, I've been going with new adults, but I know not everyone sees that as a age group. So I guess upper YA would probably be the best. And magic realism
cool.
is what I'm going with. Yeah.
And did you say there's a third book too? So
I do have a YA that is fantasy mostly, and there's a little bit of science fiction. And again, it's a dual narrator. There's two main characters, and it's a little bit of like a Romeo and Juliet sort of scenario where the one main character, Anthony, is from a line of villains, but he doesn't want to be a villain. He wants to be good.
Okay.
And he happens to fall for this boy who is a hero, who comes from a long line of heroes, and whose father just happens to be the man that Anthony's father thinks is responsible for the death of his mother.
Oh, okay.
So there's some clashing that's going on. There's some, again, the character-driven part of it is, families are complicated. Without magic, even without this notion of like, killed my wife, I'm going to get revenge.
Yeah.
It's also a story about friendship. So each of them have a very close friend that helps them through this path of figuring out, is this the truth? Did this really happen? And then once, it all comes to light, how that's going to affect the relationship between these two boys.
Yeah, cool. Wow. So they all sound amazing. You're just going to have to let me know when they're out so that I can hype you up on social and share and everything. That would be really cool. I've started in my monthly newsletter. I also do a Substack weekly, but my monthly newsletter, I do book recommendations. And so I really like to promote friends and colleagues and peers in the writing world. And, because we all help each other out, which I think is super cool.
That's so great.
So I have a last question. You did a Kickstarter for your second book, right? To raise funds for the cover art?
I did.
And so I'd love to hear about that. How did it go? What inspired you to launch the campaign?
So I've been following this artist, Pascal Campion, on Instagram. My writing bestie actually introduced me to his work, and I just fell in love with his style. And one day he posted a picture and I was like, that's Lucy. That's the character. And I just fell in love with the piece, and I was daydreaming about like, it would be so great if that could be the cover. And when I decided to do the self-publishing route, I did kind of play around with it, and I reached out via Instagram, but he never responded, which I totally get. I'm sure he gets a ton of messages and probably doesn't look at any of them. My writing group, which is actually a group of women through Peaker writers, and then my friends are so wonderful and they're so encouraging. And they were the ones that were like, I bet you could find another way to ask about this. And so it was through their encouragement that I ended up reaching out through this company that I think represents him, to get into contact with him and find out if it would be available to be licensed, and if so, what the fee would be. Sure. And she was able to, and she sent back the price. And at first I was like, that's rightly so, like, deserves the money. But at the same time, I mean, I had already paid for an editor, and it's not a cheap process. Which my editor for this one was Elizabeth Biggie, who I know through the Revise Resub. If anyone listening is not familiar with that community on Twitter, I highly recommend go follow all of the editors, because they're all incredible. It's not a cheap thing to self-publish. So then another friend of mine was like, you could do a Kickstarter potentially and raise the money. Yeah. And I had no idea that there is a large community on Kickstarter that does this, that will fund their books through Kickstarter. And another friend of mine was like, yeah, I always find books on there. I'm like, nobody ever told me.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I've been sneaking around and looking and trying to find ones that I would like to support as well. my goal as half of the fee. For Kickstarter, if you don't reach your goal, you don't get any of the money.
Oh.
So I was like, I wanted to get a goal that was like manageable, because if a couple people did it, I could, fund the rest of it myself.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by the support.
Really?
Of folks that I know, like to the point where I had to scramble to come up with stretch goals because they like so quickly surpassed the ones that I had. And then it turns out to be a really great way to find folks who maybe you wouldn't find otherwise, because there were probably a fifth of the people are people that I don't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
So it's really neat, and I'm really excited about that. Definitely learned a lot.
I love that. That's like such a sense of community around building a book. That like restores my faith in humanity. That's so cool. Well, before we finish our conversation, I'd love to hear what advice you might offer to writers listening to this episode.
I think my biggest piece of advice is always, even if no one around you takes your writing seriously, you are allowed to take it seriously.
Yeah.
I did grow up with parents that were like, you will be a doctor. I was like, I can't stand the sight of blood. I will not be a doctor. But that notion of like, it has to be stable. It has to be stable. I actually went to college as a business major, and I didn't make it to Thanksgiving, and I was an English major. So I think just you're allowed to take it seriously, even if nobody else does. You will find your people. You will find your community. I mean, I joined MPC, I think this is my 4th year.
Okay.
And finding the peaker writer community, and then my smaller writing group, like you'll find your people that will champion you and support you and fall in love with your characters. And having that writing bestie who you can call at a moment's notice. Well, we're both introverts, so we text. But, if you're stuck and you're just trying to think through a question, you can send it to this person, and they talk about your characters, and you can talk about their characters as though they're living, breathing people.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful. So my advice is, yes, take it seriously. If you want to write. You don't have to publish to be a writer. If that's not your goal, that's another piece. And then, finding your people, finding a writing buddy, I think is invaluable for those reasons. Because when you're pulling your hair out because you can't get through this plot point, and you can call them up and they know your characters well enough to know what they would do.
Yeah, I love that.
Things,
Well, Ami Irmen, thank you so much for being on the Make Meaning podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Make Meaning podcast with Lynne Golodner. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like what you've heard, subscribe and share this episode with the meaningful people in your world. And please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more at makemeaning.org or lynnegolodner.com.